July 2nd here in southern Ontario, Canada. So I spent the day immersed in following what's happening in France as the protests have escalated into full-blown rioting. Now, the mainstream media's presentation, and I mean, I looked at many different countries, view, take, commentary on what's happening in France. Both mainstream media, independent media, and, commentary people such as myself, let's say. The mainstream media's take presentation is, of course, uniformly consistent. They talk only of the prejudice and violence of the French police against the migrants in France. 2 points here. They failed to mention it was only 2 months ago France had their National Day. My apologies, I forget what it's called. The equivalent of Canada Day. Bastille Day? But whatever. I don't think it's that. Whatever the case may be. My apologies. And at that point in time, there were 1 million people in the streets in France, and the protests were bouncing in and out of rioting. And these protests have been, they've been going on for a year. Millions of people in the streets. And it's escalating, bouncing off of this violence, turning from protest to rioting again. No mention of that in the mainstream media. It's all about the migrant. Now, look at the terminology there, migrant. They use that word rather than immigrant because there's a big problem in France, and they're not the only country in Europe, the UK, everybody over there across the pond with illegal immigrants. Now, the legal immigrant is caught in this mess. The bureaucracy is overwhelmed and largely ignores them. They feel ignored. They want to do the right thing, but they can't. Meanwhile, the illegal immigrants are the cause of a lot of problems in these countries, let's be blunt. So, the mainstream media uses the term migrant and migration to sort of bury that issue. Right? So, the spark that set this off was the unfortunate shooting and death of that 17-year-old man. Well, now the racial tension is real. It absolutely is. But the mainstream media again buries the fact that it was inevitable with the open door policies of France, of the European Union, and all at the behest, the edicts of the WEF, knowing well and full the inevitability of all of this. So, the unfortunate victims are the participants and the populace who's trapped in this violence. So, it's the migrant youth who are on the streets perpetrating this violence. And they're victims. They don't see the big picture. They don't realize the enemy to them, be they legal or illegal immigrants, isn't the police. It's the Macron, the leader of France and his government. He, of course, is a young global leaders graduate and a WEF minion. And I think it's going to get worse, far worse than what it is now. But again, the mainstream media focuses on prejudice, police brutality, and constantly they're on about opportunistic looting. Well, when is there rioting without looting? That's a given. The psychology of that is consistent, easily understood. pretty sure when they were hauling Marie Antoinette off towards the guillotine that there was a blacksmith lost his forge and his tools, you know, like opportunistic looting is just part of it. But then you go to the independent journalism and just people commenting on the internet. It's a different story than what the mainstream media is presenting. And of course, I'm seeing nothing on the Canadian news about this at all. I have to go out of country to get the word. Oof. It's gonna be, well, the streets are gonna run red, I'm afraid. And it's the people who are the victims. Side note, Belgium and Switzerland are having very much the same issues. We're not hearing that. We're not seeing it at all here in Canada. Ironic Switzerland, eh? Headquarters of the WEF and the Devils in Davos.